they would have Tennessee talent come down and work them, and then vice versa would trade off. I guess about 4 or 5 years.
And where did you go after that?
After that was whenever Southern Wrestling Association appeared in town, run by David Reimer. The Reimer family was running SWA, and I actually appeared in the very first match on the very first show that Southern Wrestling Association put on. And it was me and Mario Bell and Viper.
You have obviously been with SWA for a while.
Yeah, for a good while.
And the question from that is, what have you gained in your career with being with this company?
I'm one of only 2 people to hold the Triple Crown with them. I've held every belt there, whatever belts that they had, the heavyweight tag team. Me and Mario won the Reimer Cup one year, and plus it gave me a good foundation. I always got really good feedback about how to better myself, how to act in a locker room, and how to take criticism constructively as opposed to getting upset about it, and how to apply that. And it's like in the movie Pulp Fiction, and Marcellus Wallace says, "You feel that sting, that's pride messing with you." That was one thing that was important for me to learn, and not the hard way. I learned it by listening, and sure it did sting whenever people would give me criticism about the match, and sometimes it was harsh, but I applied that and I became a better wrestler.
Let's go back and talk about the personal side of Superlaw for just a second.
Absolutely.
You said that you had been a cop for 12 years.
Yes, sir.
What were some of your highlights while you were with the police department?
Oh, God, I was a super adrenaline junkie. While I was at the police department, I got to do a whole lot of things. I worked on a SWAT team that was like a 3-man takedown team. It's kind of reminiscent of like The Shield, the show The Shield. It was also during the crack times when crack was big, and it was just rampant, and people were getting killed all the time, and it was awful. So being on the SWAT team was a pretty big deal to me. Whenever Eric Rudolph was called, the county where the chief deputy, where they call Eric Rudolph, called me personally at home and was like, "I need your team up here to come up and do security." So I got to be there for the Eric Rudolph arrest, the Olympic Park bomber and the abortion clinic bomber. So I was there to keep people from trying to break him out of jail, because that's what they were afraid of, that the locals would come in and break him out of jail. Also, during that time, I was an instructor. I taught kids. I taught adults. So I would go do various training for like a community watch or anything like that. But I was an instructor for a good portion of that time, and finally a detective with him. Worked homicides and rapes and just and you name it. And that eventually wore thin on me, having to work child rapes, or I actually had a lady die in my arms one night that had been shot in the head, and it was it was rough. Those things were. I wouldn't call it a highlight, but it did make me who I am today, and made me realize the value of life and things of that nature.
At what point did it change for you to where you said, "Okay, I can't do this anymore"?
It changed whenever I became so depressed and distraught, I guess, with human nature and with myself and unhappiness. And I go to the doctor one day and I tell him, I'm really feeling down, Doc, and he prescribes me a wonderful drug called Xanax. And I say that jokingly because it's an awful drug. And eventually I ended up inadvertently becoming addicted to it and detoxed out, and eventually lost my job because of all of it. My wrestling family was all that I had left to turn to after, having basically what I thought was going to be a career in this, but just seeing that it wasn't what I thought it was going to be after seeing the negative side of humanity for so long, and seeing 2-3-year-old children raped and people savagely beaten and taking advantage of the system, and it was just awful. And and I thought that this doc would take care of me, and it was a family doctor, and I don't blame him at all. I totally blame myself, but he's the one that said, "Here, try this out," and I did, and it made all my worries go away.
With you talking about the state of depression, how did you deal, man?
Well, like I said, if it wasn't for wrestling, I don't know where I would be, because I turned to my wrestling family. I turned to those that I knew that weren't, in my hometown, so to speak, that weren't part of that environment that I was with, and I would go there for an adrenaline release. It was almost like I could take everything out in the ring by performing or being, beaten up and feeling those aches and pains and everything, and just being a complete masochist about it, like most wrestlers are. It's like it was like, oh, I'm sore today. I'm sore on Sunday and Monday. That's a good kind of sore, though. Even if you've got a broke bone, it's a good kind of sore. And it's something that I see a lot of. I guess I won't say I used it as a crutch, but I definitely used it as a coping mechanism to deal with getting away from reality. And that was not always a good thing. It was often turned into me working these extremely hardcore matches, very violent, doing things that I probably shouldn't have done. My list of injuries is a mile long. I've been almost paralyzed. Well, I was on a walker for 2 months. I've had knee replacement. I've had a list of injuries so long, and it got to the point where I was careless with it and not really understanding that I'm there to be professional, to entertain, and I was just using it for personal gain. And I don't feel bad saying anything about that, because it happened, and it was, I did have fun. I had fun during all that, but then came the time when it was time to, wake up and see, like, are you going to be serious about this, or are you going to continue to be in barbed wire matches, and live tube matches, and whatever kind of match you can possibly imagine, I've been in. And it was, at what point do you change up, and do you do this as an entertainer, because that's your calling and everything. And so once the law enforcement was not prevalent in my life anymore, and once I was able to apply myself, to wrestling properly, without the use of, taking unneeded risks or, using prescription drugs or whatever to get through things, and seeing that it's a positive thing and a positive environment, and that the people really do care about you, that the fans really care about you, and that your brothers and your sisters really do care about you, and it's not just like an environment where you're there to beat yourself up. Once I got to that point, my A game really stepped up, and I became the wrestler that I am today. Where I take it very seriously. I'm an entertainer. You may not think I'm being serious in the ring, because of a lot of comedy that's involved in it sometimes. So it may not appear like I'm being very serious, but I take it extremely serious. And that was the turnaround for me, was, realizing that moment that, like, hey, if you're going to have any longevity out of this, if you're going to stay in this business and you're going to perform, you're going to travel and work these different shows, then you can't be like that person. That's a flash in the pan. That's something that's self-destructive, and the fans will eventually catch on, and and your brothers and sisters or whatever will come to, they'll catch on. They know, they're wise. And I didn't want that anymore. I wanted to apply myself and learn and go to seminars, go to training sessions, and train. Every time I go to a match, I would show up, 4 or 5 hours early, so I could get in the ring and just train with the guys. So that was a turning point for me, where I definitely made a huge turn in the character of Superlaw.
Carolina Independent Wrestling Report will be right back, right after this.
Would it be crazy if you just stopped everything, packed your bags, and left for a week, a month, a year? What if you left for 2 years? Would people think you'd lost your mind? What if you were going far away to help in a village on the edge of the Gobi Desert? A village crowded with Buddhist temples, not skyscrapers. A place where there isn't a word for recluse, but 1,000 words for community. Would it be crazy to go 5,000 miles from home? To spend time with people the rest of the world only reads about? To build libraries and fill them with stories? Prepare a meal with food you helped grow? To teach children and learn a thing or two about yourself? Would that be crazy? Peace Corps. Life is calling. How far will you go? To find out more, call 1-800-424-8580 or visit peacecorps.gov.
We'll be right back with our featured interview on this week's Carolina Independent Wrestling Report right after this.
PWX Wrestling returns to Winston-Salem, North Carolina at Ziggy, February 22nd, 2015 with Cedric Alexander, Caleb Conner, Country Jack, Worst Case Scenario, John Schuyler, Anthony Henry, and for the first time in North Carolina, the Young Bucks. Tickets available at pwxpro.com. It's PWX Wrestling. Live the experience.
Be listening later in the show for the PWX Word of the Week. Then locate their ticket page on their website at pwxpro.com and enter the code word for your chance to win a free ticket. 2 tickets per week.
This is the Southern Savior, John Schuyler.
This is Chief J. Eagle.
This is Ethan Case, and you are listening to the CIW Report, pal.
We are talking with Superlaw on this week's CIW Report. Law, the one thing that I want to know about, because you, like me, have gone through a marriage that has ended in divorce, but with that, I want to know how professional wrestling has affected your relationship with your kids, because right now I'm proclaiming that pro wrestling had an effect on my relationship with my daughter. What has been the relationship with your kids throughout wrestling?
Okay, there's a box out on my porch, like a big Tupperware container box with stuff, whatever in it. And on the side of it, I know when my kids had written on the side of it, their top 10 favorite wrestlers. And it goes through Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker and Owen Hart and Sting, and then at the very top of the list it says Law. And that was how it was for many, many years. And through, a downside and destructive side, I lost touch with my children. I'm not happy about it or anything like that. It's just something that happened, and I'm not proud about it. It's a lot different now that time has passed. And being on the road all the time, every weekend and applying it to wrestling, I foolishly lost a lot of time with my kids that I should have been spending with them. And I instead, for whatever selfish reason, was on the road a lot. But I'm happy to say now that that's not the case, that I love my children very much, and they did suffer through my selfishness of wrestling. I'm really opening up here. Wow.
Last question on that. If you could do anything over, what would it be? It
would be spending more time with my children. As far as that aspect of everything, that would be the one thing that I do wish that I could go back and do differently, and I kick myself in the butt all the time for it. But that is the one thing that I seriously wish that I could have done different, because it started off really well. They would go with me to shows and everything, and then it just kind of went downhill. So that's the one thing, setting aside that personal time as opposed to being so in the moment of what we know as wrestling. So that's one thing.
All right. We're going to go downhill here, get out of the somber mood. I have a tough task for you with this next question.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that you are a horror movie aficionado.
Absolutely.
I want you to give me your top 3 horror movies.
Not a problem. First and foremost, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the first one, hands down. One of my favorite movies. If you've been to my house, my bedroom door is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre door. I have a tattoo of, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So yeah, definitely the number one pick. Let's see, number 2. Wow, let's see. Let's get deep about this.
Okay, hold on a second.
Oh, I'm holding on.
We've already established that your first one is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm going to make it a little bit easier on you.
Okay.
Give me your top 5.
What? That's not easier. That's harder. That's harder. I've got some strange picks for horror movies. I would go with the remake of Piranha. Have you seen this?
No, I have not.
Okay, the remake of Piranha, I don't know, it's not necessarily a horror movie. It's a gore fest, but it is awesome. Oh, my gosh, it is so good. The remake is so good. It's effects-driven, but it's like the old-school effects, like where they have people that have lost limbs and stuff, and they will show up like they've been eaten up by a piranha. So Piranha, I love that movie. And I'm going to stick on the ocean motif. The very first movie I ever saw. Here we go. Superlaw trivia. This is why I am the way I am. Jaws. It is consistently rated the scariest movie of all time. It kept people out of the water for years. Third, I'll go with Audition, Japanese horror movie. If you haven't seen that, it's completely horrifying. It's about a girl who goes to audition for a movie, and she gets used, and she gets her revenge. A very, very scary movie. I will go with the very first Halloween as well. The first Halloween, because there's such of that mystery involving Michael Myers, and it was made on like a shoestring budget, and it was groundbreaking for its time. Okay, and the last one will be the original George Romero, Night of the Living Dead. Oh, no, wait. And then one more. I got to add one more. 1,000 Corpses. Hands down. Yes, that's a good one, too.
Okay.
6. You got 6.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Okay. It is time in the show when I go into the section that we like to call the fanny pack philosophy. During the time that I interviewed Ethan Case was on a mission to bring back the fanny pack.